It's now time for this month's broadcast of Learning Now TV.
Welcome to Learning Now Television's last show of 2020. Nigel, I think we all thought we'd never get here.
How true your words are, Kate. But at least you've made a very glittery Christmas effort, and I've put a few lights around the screen.
Feeling festive. Vaccines for Christmas for everybody.
Exactly. That little teeny glimmer of hope somewhere on the horizon. That's what's keeping us going. So it's a great show today, 100%.
In the meantime, who have we got on the show today?
Well, we've got a really interesting panel session, and it's a very varied, diverse panel with some really different views, which is exactly what we were trying to achieve. So that is Mars Runham, Teresa Spera, Suk Pabial, and Zara Clark-Johnny. Don't miss it.
Friends of the show. Great.
Friends of the show, plus our regulars, Robin Hoyle, John Hinchliffe, and Hannah Gore.
Fantastic. Enjoy the show.
Welcome to the very first Learning Now TV Christmas panel. And tell us if you like it, because if you do, we'll run panels more regularly as a kind of feature of Learning Now Television. So this is a little bit of an experiment and also just a bit of Christmas cheer for everybody. And I'm absolutely thrilled to be introducing four absolutely fantastic representatives, I think, of the breadth, depth, diversity of L&D in the UK, but also reflecting around the world as well. So in my top left is Teresa Spera from GP Strategies.
Hello.
My right, Zara Clark-Johnny, now working for the Sports Institute. Is that or the Institute of Sport?
The English Institute of Sport.
The English Institute of Sport, but shortly to go global or cosmic even. And then down below, Mars Runham, a consultant, erstwhile colleague in the BBC, an all-round good guy. And finally, Suk Pabial recently launched his own company, stepping out into the world. So welcome all four of you. I'm going to ask my first question, and if you could just say a little bit about yourselves as you're answering the question. That question is a really simple one. Have you had a good year? Has your organization had a good year? And we'll start with you, Suk. Tell us a little bit about yourself, then answer the question.
So first of all, thanks for having us, me on the panel. Really appreciate being invited to be on here. And so I'm Suk Pabial. I'm the chief. I've given myself the rather lofty title of Chief Learning Officer at Challenging Frontiers. I mean, considering there's only me, there's not really much competition in my way to kind of overtake that position. So I can call myself anything I wanted to, really. I should probably just call myself Junior Administrator and see how many jobs and clients I actually get with that. You know, but anyway. So the question is a good one. How's the year been? It's been a real rocky ride, actually, personally and professionally. I was in a full-time role for much of the year, beginning of the year. Obviously, we all had moved to working from home, which was fine enough in and of itself. Over the summer, kind of felt actually this isn't how I want to continue with things. So I decided to leave that role and give myself some space to think about setting up a new business. Did that, set up Challenging Frontiers. Then got hit with COVID, which knocked me out for about 5 weeks, which was completely unexpected and never experienced anything like that. The fatigue was just something incredible to have to deal with. And having recovered from that now, it's probably been about 3 weeks having been properly recovered and feeling like I'm back to myself. Starting to try and have conversations again with clients. So might not have been the best person to have started with. I apologize, Nigel. It's just been a bit of this year has been a real kind of a year of change in personal and professional ways. So it's hard to kind of comment any further than just beyond what the experience was in and of itself, beyond any kind of business success or client success or anything like that.
That's a really interesting trajectory. Thank you. Thank you very much for sharing that. Teresa, what about you?
Hello, everyone, and thank you for having me, Nigel. This is great. I'm Teresa Spera, and I'm with GP Strategies. I recently joined GP in June as a member of the Client Services Leadership Team, managing the EU clients as a Global Client Director, which has been absolutely great. I feel personally, given everything that's going on and hearing obviously a personal experience, very, very fortunate for everything that's been going on in the world. You know, touch wood, been healthy, so has my husband and family. We have been very much been self-isolating. And then since June, been very, very focused in my new role. And I'm lucky to get a fantastic team and a company. Since I was only with GP for the second half of the year, I can't speak much to the total picture, but I can say they've come through a very tough year in a positive way. They've done very good by their clients and the employees, and everyone's been sticking together. It feels odd to say that it's been positive, but with GP's flexibility and capabilities, they haven't really slowed down with COVID, given the position that they're in the industry, which is very interesting to see. As you can imagine, been working on quite a few projects and with existing clients and new clients, and on new ways of looking at learning from processes to modalities and how to manage through COVID. So we've seen quite a mix going on, but it's an accelerated evolution, I think, from some of the things that maybe companies were talking about to they had to do this.
Sure.
So like moving more to VILT, but also to more fast and efficient adjustments in how our clients do things. And we've been fortunate enough to be there to help. So it's been a really interesting journey coming from all the uncertainty at the beginning of the year. So.
Okay. Thank you very much for that. Zara, change for you as well this year.
Yeah. So I've just started as the digital learning manager at the English Institute of Sport. So again, I can't really say how the year's been there, but I know that recently they've done their first virtual conference, all staff conference, which went really well, and they're to the point that they're even considering, should this be something we look at in the future, keeping certain elements of it virtual. But before being at EIS, I was at Southwark Council, and that was a bit more of a challenge just because it was a very desk-based organisation. So it was more about just how exactly do we get people working from home when they don't have laptops and all that kind of stuff. But yeah, it was, so as much as it was a challenge, it was something that we were able to overcome by just getting people out laptops, getting people set up with the technology, giving the training and support that they need. So then after a few months, it was kind of we're much more in a much better position, still starting to be able to deliver different opportunities online and all that kind of stuff. So you're pretty much able to still serve the public in this time of need when you're needed most.
Sure.
And for me personally, then it's been a good year. So this has been my 30 under 30 year. So I've had loads of different opportunities like this. So I've just been trying to make the most out of it, and
Good. That's good to hear. So it's 3 out of 3 so far completely changed their lives around in the course of a very difficult year. Miles, what about you? Same for you? How are you doing? How's things been?
But similar, perhaps not quite the same. So just briefly, so Miles Runner, I work as an independent consultant to organizations, mainly helping people figure out what to do about digital, really, in different forms. Not so much technology, but what does digital mean, what opportunities and what challenges. And I think in terms of work, I guess, I started the year with certain expectations, which, like everybody, they evaporated immediately. The beginning of April, late March, the world changed. The work that I thought was a sure thing disappeared. But then after some time of, I would say, kind of existential panic, just to be honest about it, then things started to change, and it has been actually, in terms of as a freelancer, I guess it's been actually a very busy year. So I've had a lot of good and really interesting work, which is great. Whether that's luck or judgment or timing, I couldn't possibly comment. I think what's been interesting about the work actually is that a lot of the projects I've been working on have actually been very similar, maybe a bit more urgent, a bit more intensity, a bit more confusion and uncertainty from clients. But the actual work that I've been engaged on feels like it's trying to help solve similar problems about how to apply tools to the right choices, how to understand what's a really important challenge versus something that feels important, what kind of analysis to do, etc. Though the actual work that I've been doing has actually felt very similar, which I think is, perhaps in retrospect, what you might expect, given that digital has been such a huge thread, I guess, through a very, very confusing year.
So Miles,
sorry,
I was going to say, if you continue on that vein, can you give us your top tech tip? I knew I wouldn't be able to get that out without fluffing it. Your top tech tip. So either from this year, what do you think is emerging, or you think will emerge next year?
So I think this my top tech tip, I guess, is for this year and anticipating for next as well. And it's not new, it's nothing fancy. I think I've found that messaging tools have been really just indispensable for me, whether that's WhatsApp or using enterprise systems messaging, corporate social networks, etc. But I think the ability to very quickly and simply ask and answer questions directly to people and groups has been so valuable for me, saving time, avoiding confusion. And I think part of that is it doesn't substitute, but it maybe contributes a bit of conversational contact with people. So I'm looking forward to more of the same next year. So I'm going to hold on to those tools as something that's going to help me again next year, I think.
Yeah, they've been very empowering. That found that organizations where the IT infrastructure has completely failed them have just organized themselves. They've said, right, let's all get on a WhatsApp group and continue the conversation. So it's been a bit of a lifeline, I think, for some people. Thank you. Sarah, what about your top tech tip?
So yeah, I think it's kind of similar in just to explore the tools you have, because some of them they can do quite a lot more than you realize, but it's more just actually exploring it, and also just keeping up with the updates, because there's been a lot of updates this year.
Zoom every week there's a new version of Zoom.
So there's some things where some of the features where I just wrote them off like a few months ago, and then you find out there's an update and it's now pretty decent. So I think just keeping up with those, exploring the tools you have, and just seeing what you can do with it.
Yeah. What about you, Teresa? You already mentioned a couple of tech tips in your introduction.
So I think mine's broader, and I keep seeing this, and it emerged prior to COVID, but it's definitely materializing more so as we go in and going to 2020. Like having a lot of conversations. I think it's three things. It's making sure the tech has a purpose, and it's driving towards the need or the business goal. Make sure the tech enables. We are all getting very tech savvy, but also tech fatigued. So it has to be the tools need to really enable your employees and the business. And I also think, and this is going to probably be a slightly controversial one who depends on who sees this, is really find a true partner for tech. It's no longer just putting the tech in, flipping the switch, paying for the licenses, and then it's tech for tech's sake. But it ties back to the two things about purpose and enablement. So, and also having a partner that's flexible. I think a lot of the tech companies kind of say, here it is. They believe their own, purpose, but it's not a one size fits all, as we're finding, because each company has to maneuver a little bit differently. So I think, purpose, enablement, and partnership are three key things when looking at tech and using tech. Does it really help the organization? Does it drive toward my goal? Am I working with a company that can actually partner with me to move through all these very quick changes that the world is going through? So
it's very helpful. And I certainly think that's true, that a lot of tech companies seem to believe their own marketing propaganda, and tech is not a solution, it's a tool. You've got to build the solution. I think that's very good advice. So what about you? What have you found most useful? What has helped you move into your new role? How do you feel you connect with the rest of the world best?
Like the rest of the world, WhatsApp is my lifeline to just kind of connecting with people. Yeah, it's one of the easiest tools to use for that kind of informal communication. I was just going to build on just what Teresa was saying there, actually, though, around the purpose around the tech. It can be really easy, not just for the tech vendors to get sold by their own marketing, but to genuinely get sold by the tech marketing in the space as well, without really understanding, or not. And I say this with respect. I don't mean that people are being ignorant going into buying or procuring tech, but without really understanding how is it going to integrate with the other systems that we've got. And that can really present an unexpected set of challenges, which, it can derail a project before it's even started, because suddenly you're wanting to implement this whole new system, and does the current system support it? Can you actually do the things that you want to do in the best way possible? And also, I think we're starting to move much more strongly towards this idea of an ecosystem of tech, as opposed to, one system will fix it all. This isn't Lord of the Rings. It's not how this. We're not meant to work in that way. We shouldn't be trying to fix everything with just one solution. It can make sense from a procurement and from a one point of contact perspective, but actually that's just, if you look at how we use tech on a day-to-day basis, I don't have one app that does everything for me. I have several apps that do several things for me because I have different needs as my day goes on. Organizations are the same. They have very different needs for very different things on a day-to-day basis. That's just how, that's what life should be about, and it's how it is. So I guess it's those couple of things, right? So one is, just make sure that the if you are going to buy in some new tech, that it will integrate and integrate well. And then actually there's a further piece there around the user experience as well. Will it be easy enough for people to use? Because sometimes you can get in a really great system, but the user experience is just really bad, or it's really poor, and that's an important consideration as well.
Thank you. Yeah, all extremely good, useful points. And they've all kind of emerged out of the year, haven't they? We've learnt an awful lot in a very short amount of time, which is going to, I hope, set us up in good standing for the new year. Talking of the new year, have you got any tips, Teresa, a tip or a warning for people for next year?
I would go back to my tech tip around purpose, enablement, and then partnership. But playing to the point of ecosystems, I think a lot about this and work with this with clients. And we, like any ecosystem, you need to nurture it. And some things can grow out of control and take over other things. So it's really finding that balance within even a tech ecosystem to make sure everything is functioning in harmony. Because something could be a time suck and people could be going off, and it's really, again, that UX experience where someone's spending so much time doing something that's really not, fit for purpose for what you're trying to do. So again, going back to the purpose and enablement for business goals. So that'd be my advice for the new year, is really being mindful of how everything is interconnected. And I like the example that was given around, in your personal life, we don't have one app that does everything. So looking to that. So, I guess, and a second, I would say, stay away from absolutes. We've heard a lot of absolutes this year, like ILT is dead. We'll never go back to the office. Things will never be the same. I think we need to get some perspective. I think there'll be some massive shifts, but I think this too shall pass. And stay away from absolutes.
Good advice, Teresa. What about you, Sarah? Give us your tip for next year or your warning for next year.
So I think it's just, so this year there's been a lot of acceleration in the digital space. So I think it's more just understand what people have enjoyed and liked from this experience. So many people, they've never used like Teams, they've never used WhatsApp. So yeah, so many things that they're now discovering. Is kind of, what is it that you want to keep, and make sure that you don't lose that momentum, because face-to-face will start back, but it's kind of more, some people are more open to the idea of digital, so you don't want to lose that, but it's more just finding that balance and trying to get the best from whichever environment it is that you've chosen to use for that purpose. Thank you.
What about you, Sue? Any tips for next year, or warnings, dire warnings for next year?
Dire warnings. I think that one of the things that I think we've really learned this year is that there's too much information about too much stuff, and it can be really easy to get lost down rabbit holes. So I'm going to just kind of step back a bit from kind of the traditional topics we're talking about here, because they impact us on a day-to-day basis. We can feel really overwhelmed by data, information, news, so much. So I think one of the things we're really realizing is that the well-being aspect of life now is really being thrown to the front. So take care of yourselves, people. That's my tip, is do the stuff to do the self-care. Slow down, take your time. You don't have to be in everything all the time. we're allowed to take space. We're allowed to take time for ourselves, and it's okay to not feel okay. Sometimes we can feel overwhelmed, and sometimes we can get too much with too much stuff. And take a break, take a step back, give yourself that time and space to recover, give yourself that mental and emotional space.
Note to self, listen to what Suk just said. Take action. It's very good. Thank you. Thank you. You're absolutely right. Miles, what about you? Warning or tip?
Maybe it's something of the both, perhaps. So,
Okay.
so I think something that I've observed, not necessarily scientifically, but from conversations and from reading and listening this year, is that we need to be really careful about using digital tools to replicate and replace what happens when we're face to face, whether that's in a conversation, a meeting, a classroom, a workshop, whatever. I think there's been a bit of a dash to that, to assume that, because you can put the same people on a screen, that you can have the same experience, and I don't think we can, and I don't think we should try. So I think we should try to use digital tools to solve the problems that they can solve, and not try to replicate whatever we call a face-to-face experience. I think behind that, that's not to say that a face-to-face experience is better qualitatively than any other experience. I think they have different roles to play, and I wonder. This isn't a warning, but I wonder about the return to face-to-face. I can sense this sort of powerful impulse in learning and development to get back to the classroom. It's a potent and elemental force, and the vaccines are going to bring us back to the light. And I think, economically and logistically, maybe not. I think the world's going to be very different. You're right, Teresa. I don't know how different and in what ways, but it won't be the same. And I think so. I think we need to be quite careful about those choices and about managing that impulse, because we might be finding other ways, maybe not better, but different. And so I think, yeah, that's what I'm kind of hoping for next year, I guess, is a curiosity in that direction.
Yeah,
Nigel, can I jump in with something there?
Yes, go ahead. Suk.
So something just came to mind as Miles and Teresa were talking about their thoughts as to where things are going. So something came to mind recently on it was a bit of insight into how music has changed over the decades, and how we went from 8-track tapes to cassettes to vinyls, right early on, right through to suddenly the iPod came along, vinyls dropped radically, and CDs just fell off the face of the earth. But now we're seeing a resurgence back into vinyls, actually, and they're becoming a really, really potent form of music consumption. And obviously the digital space is continuing to take over whatever that used to be. And I think there's just some interesting insight there in terms of consumer behavior, which we can also take forward into just kind of general behavior as well, around learning technology, how we do things, the traditional ways of doing things. Some things do need to just die and just be left alone. Other things will probably come back. So facilitation in person is probably going to come back. We just probably need to put it on a shelf for a fair while, because to Miles's point, it's just not going to happen in the next couple of years, not in any meaningful way. So there's just, I think there's a space and time we need to appreciate as to where we are, and that we can't force things or rush back to things just because we have a desire to.
Yep,
we have to be very cognizant
differently.
of the public health space.
I think that's right. It will come back differently. And I think, to Miles's point, that my adage is we don't need to translate, we need to transform. And as soon as we get a translation metaphor model in our head, we always make a mess of it. So you don't just replicate, you think it through again. And that's maybe a good message for 21, thinking it all through again. So Zara, what's your top tip or your resolution for 21? What are you going to do differently?
So Suk basically stole it, but it is take more breaks.
Yes.
Think about the well-being a lot more, and
Yes.
to just slow down, try to get out of the house more, even if the weather's like this. And just not to overload, but actually to practice what you preach, type thing. Because we all know about the whole well-being thing, but it's like, do you actually do it? So to actually just focus in, take more breaks, and relax.
Yeah. What is your top tip, Miles? Top resolution for 21?
I'm going to resolve to do more of what I've done in the last sort of month or so. I sort of missed my very urban London-centric networking routine of, meeting for coffee and lunch in town, etc. And I've just replaced it with finding time for the people that I, am interested in and respect, just to have a chat, just make time to chat about, maybe about work, maybe about projects, maybe about anything, but and I find that really refreshing and energizing, just to hear what, compare notes, hear what's on people's minds. So I'm going to try and make sure I make time for that in whatever guise I can.
Thank you. And Teresa, your resolution for 21?
What's a bit of a combination of everything we're talking about. But I try not to make resolutions. I'm kind of a mindset of a continuous improvement program, trying to constantly check in with myself, see where I need to adjust and keep iterating. That's kind of been my philosophy for a long time.
That's a good tip. Just in itself, you've done it. Yeah. Just don't make resolutions.
Don't make resolutions, just continuous improvement. However, it is about self-care. And I find myself sometimes sitting for 10 hours. And it's hard to get motivated to go outside and go for a walk and check in sometimes, because you're fatigued being on camera and checking in with loved ones. So it's really my resolution, I guess, if I were to have one moving forward, is setting more boundaries and creating more space for self-care and also the others that I care about and colleagues, and just seeing how everyone's doing. Because I think we were doing that really well at the beginning in version 1.0 of COVID. And then we started to get into these entrenched into these routines where we're just kind of, grinding every day. So it's, again, restoring some balance, whatever that means for everyone. But for me, it's getting outside and then reconnecting.
Thank you. Sue, you've got the final word. You set the kind of tone for wellness and self-care. So give us your resolution.
I'm glad
different.
That I'm
different
glad
to
that,
all of that.
Yeah, no, it's I'm glad that people are wanting to give that more attention. I think it's the right thing. Like, we're all facing this together. Collectively, we're in this together. It's not like we're facing different things in a different way. We're actually facing the same stuff. So to give it that attention is for me is a good thing. I'm with Teresa. I don't really do resolutions. I gave up on them many years ago. I'm actually following her suit on over the years. I tend to look to see how am I, what's going on for me, and checking in with myself and checking in with my friends and my loved ones who help me to know what's going on. I just recently completed Movember, and that was a fun thing to have done. And but I hated growing the mo, right? So it's just one of those things, right? It's fun. It helped the month go by with a bit of ease, and there's things that we can still do. And so, I guess my call out or my encouragement is there are things we can do to keep ourselves well, keep ourselves in a good place, optimistic, hopeful, positive. Find those healthy things, because they are going to keep you in good stead.
It's great message from all of you to leave. So it is all about self-care, doing good work, but doing good work as well as doing good for ourselves and good for our organizations. So thank you all. And I really hope you have a great Christmas, and that 2021 is very different from 2020. That is what I hope, and I guess the whole world hopes too. So thank you so much for joining me. It's been a real pleasure talking to you, and we got some fantastic insights. So thank you all, and the very best for the future.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, Nigel. Thanks, everybody.
Great New Year and Christmas.
DPG's online courses are designed to fit around your life, so you can study anytime, anywhere. Get in touch now for more info.
Robin's talking about performance improvement and noting that this year has created many challenges, but also many opportunities to move forward in that sphere. So that's great. Thank you, Robin. Thanks for ending on a high note.
It's that time of year when we tend to look back, isn't it, as the evenings grow longer, here in the Northern Hemisphere anyway. It's that opportunity to hunker down and maybe think back over the past year and prepare ourselves for the year to come. And of course, the year to come is still pretty uncertain, isn't it? We don't know what's going to happen. What we do know, though, is that we've actually dealt with an awful lot of change. A lot of that was imposed upon us, and if ever the phrase necessity is the mother of invention proved its worth, it was over the course of 2020. So, first things first, there's been some really good stuff done within learning and development in the past 12 months, and some of that Maybe people were initially reluctant, maybe people feel that they've been forced into it, and I know lots of people within L&D have been running at 100 miles an hour, trying to cope with all of the demands which are placed upon them as we help people move to remote working and we get people up to speed with working virtually. But also we still want to maintain a conversation about performance and performance improvement with people using the mechanisms that are now available to us. So while we've been constrained, we've also done some really good work. And a lot of that good work has been based on the things that we have been experimenting with maybe not quite so much urgency over the previous years. So small bite-sized learning pieces, using virtual to deliver short bursts of activity rather than rely on people coming together and it becomes a big logistical nightmare. Workflow learning, engaging with people on short assignments and activities where they can easily transfer what we've covered into the workplace, to reflect on that, to learn from their mistakes, to share their experience with others and to go, hey, this works for me, or this didn't quite work. Has anybody else found out a way of doing this? So we've had that opportunity to really accelerate some of the good stuff that was already going on, but which wasn't maybe finding traction in all organisations. Well, it has done now, because it's had to. And that's been enormously positive. But we've also got to look back and go, well, not everything has been fantastic. So we should take some of this time to say, look, we developed all of this really, really rapidly. Now let's pause. Let's just look back at it and go, well, what could we do differently, better? How can we refine that? And of course, we've got some people who are still quite resistant to some of the things we've been doing, whether that's virtual technology, whether that's learning digitally, whether that's been undertaking workplace assignments. So we should go and speak to those individuals and go, look, yeah, I know you've had a problem with it. I know you've found it a difficult transition to adjust to these new ways of working, but how can we make it more interesting? How can we make it more useful to you? How can we make it, dare I say it, enjoyable for people to go through this stuff? And so there is a source of learning there. Of course, we've got to choose those people carefully. I mean, was involved in a meeting only yesterday where a head of learning and development, no less, actually said, well, of course, not everybody's learning style is suitable for virtual. And I bit my tongue, but you know, the idea that A, we're talking about learning style still, and B, somebody thinks there's a virtual learning style now. Well, I understand some people find it more difficult. Sometimes it's difficult because it feels a bit the same as everything else that we're doing at the moment. You know, I'm still sat in the same chair in front of the same laptop, surrounded by the same walls. And sometimes learning gives us an opportunity to move out of our environment and just take some time to think differently with different colleagues. And here we are, and it feels the same, doesn't it? But actually, that aside, I think we've done some enormously good things, and we can learn and we can improve as long as we don't listen to the people who still think there is a virtual learning style, and we can get better at this. But we have done fantastically well. I am really, really proud to be part of an industry, part of a profession, part of a community which has really stepped up and responded magnificently to a set of circumstances that this time last year none of us could have imagined. And the important thing about that sense of pride and achievement is to say, great, what's next? What else can we do with this? Because my fervent belief is we ain't going back to how things were in 2019 anytime soon. In fact, we've got to get better and better and better and make whatever that new reality becomes and settles down in to be the very best it can, not only for our people, not only for our organisations, but for ourselves. Because we deserve to take some plaudits for the work that's happened here. But we will only retain those plaudits, retain the kudos that is coming our way rightly at the moment, if we continue to adapt, continue to adopt new approaches, new ways of working, and we continue to achieve in the same way as we've achieved in 2020. I'll see you in 2021. I hope you keep safe. I hope you have a great festive season, whatever that means for you and wherever you are in the world. And I hope you keep safe.
Dr. Hannah Gore is back with us again to continue her series about engaging conversations. In part 4, she's talking about being engaging in written reports, a challenge for many, I'm sure. Over to you, Hannah.
Hi everyone, it's Dr. Hannah Gore, Learning Experience Director over at the Canterbury Consultancy Group, and welcome to episode number 4 of Engaging Conversations. Now, in previous episodes, in case you've missed any, do go back and take a look at them. We have been looking at engaging conversations with stakeholders, engaging in online, and engaging in face-to-face. And now we're at engaging in written reports, because two different areas that are important here. One is if you're using the flipped classroom methodology, you have to think about the written aspects to it, as well as with the episode in online learning, but also as well when it comes to report writing as to what we've been doing and the types of changes that we've been making inside our organisations. So, step number 1 is to think about, back to episode number 1, the types of stakeholders we're going to be engaging with and what they want out of this report. Now, in your organisation, you may previously have written really long reports. I am not a fan of really long reports because they're very long to get through, but also, where are the take-homes? What is it you need me to do? What is it that we've learnt from this? How is it we're achieving? 4 bullet points. I don't need an extra long report for that. So, consider different ways that you can actually concisely explain what it is that you have been doing inside the workplace. Now, that may be through an infographic, it may be through a couple of slides on a PowerPoint, a 1-pager, 2 pages maximum of a report. Really drive home the key points instead of thinking that we have to have long reports for long report's sake because that makes us more important. Our outcomes make us important. Our changing lives is what makes us important. So consider the different ways of displaying the types of work that you are actually developing here. Also consider the feedback. Do you have feedback from the learners? Do you have feedback from business managers, from members of staff who have undertaken your learning and has actually changed them? So this is very important for bringing our learning to life. Bin off the vanity metrics. I am never bothered about bums on seats. That doesn't tell me anything about engagement. It's really about how people actually took our learning, developed it for themselves, developed their outcomes, and then developed themselves as people. That is important data to capture. How many people attended learning is not important data to capture. How it is changing the bottom line of an organisation, saving time, money, resources, and developing members of staff, those are the types of metrics that we should be capturing. So consider, what is it that your actual stakeholders need to hear? Have those as take-homes. Make sure it's very clear and concise. Then pass that report to 2 different sets of people. The first person you'll find inside your department. They will tell you if you're missing something really important about a case study, about a person, a learning outcome, a new development inside the pipeline, what worked, what didn't. That is fantastic. We need to make sure we've plugged all the gaps. It's very difficult when we're all sitting at home to remember everything that has happened in the past year, especially when the last 6 months feel so long. And then secondly, pass off the report to somebody not inside your team or department. That is crucially important. Can they tell you whether or not that report has hit the outcome that you wanted for the stakeholder that you had in mind? What is it you want from me? What's in it for me? Where was the bottom line increased? Where has the difference been made? Ask them if that report can tell them this piece of information. If it can't, it needs adjusting. And these are 2 very important tests that we can run our reports through. Now more than ever, we have to be demonstrating our worth. And now more than ever, we have to be showing our ability to do that. So written report writing, though sometimes feels a little bit tedious, can sometimes actually be our best asset. So consider how you're presenting it, how long you're presenting it for, what are the take-homes, and whether or not those stakeholders have had their questions answered. There's lots of resources available over on my blog at drhannahgore.com, so please do take a look at that. If you have any questions, please drop me a line. I'm very easy to find through my website or through LinkedIn. But in the meantime, stay safe, take care, and I'll see you all again soon. Bye.
John Hinchliffe is back, and he's looking at something, I think probably a trend that he's put his finger on, and that is how learning and development are using staff from outside their environment to create really good experiential learning and create a sense of reality of life as it is, as opposed to life as it maybe as they want it to be or would like it to be. So good post, John. Thank you.
Hi there. If COVID has instilled anything in us, is that we need to be adaptable, not only in the way we run our businesses, but also the way in which we run our L&D functions. It's previously been said the last best experience that anyone has anywhere becomes the minimum expectation for the experience they want everywhere. And with the rapid migration to online, this means digital transformation needs to be a consumer-grade experience. We've seen this change from organizations willing to explore utilizing roles and skills that are not traditionally incorporated so they can produce a great learning experience for their people. Regarding roles, we're starting to see organizations using freelance professionals such as copywriters to distill the information they wish to present as they're learning, and then being able to present this perfectly in sync with the tone of voice of the organization. From this definition, copywriters are great at creating written content that aims to increase awareness and ultimately persuade a person or group to take a particular action. This is without doubt the goal of an L&D function. And by interlinking these external roles, the writers have the ability to evoke emotions and eloquently nudge the reader to take action where required. All in all, producing a far more naturally sounding learning piece. Also, the shift to nurturing and helping employees through this time has even seen the incorporation of executive coaches to non-executives, adapting to meet an organization's needs during these times to be able to provide people with the ability to be listened to. Through these periods of isolation, having the chance to make sense of now and plan for the future is not only healthy for our people, but also displays that the business is investing in its people's careers. We've seen the adaptation to integrating marketing within L&D to provide focused campaigns and keep the momentum of learning initiatives within organizations. Seeing the rise of community managers to actually facilitate this, utilizing skills provided by specialists in identifying who your audience is, engaging them, informing them, and also entertaining them to encourage them to share their new knowledge. From marketing, we can also look at the learning experience as a whole, where we need to provide insight and the relevant tools that can be used to connect them when required with this information at the point of need. Now is about pivoting, and it's how do we break this down and what we do to be effective to the way we actually utilize the L&D function as well as within our business. Stepping back to make sense to utilize the roles and skills, it really just kind of makes sense for us as an individual but also as an organization to utilize people, utilize skills that have that speciality in engaging and also presenting information. This is shifting us away from what is classed as traditional, but also it's us looking at the evolution and being adaptable. It's a curious time for us to be living in. It's also looking at how are large organizations actually making this adaptation to really incorporate those individuals, those skills, and then how will this migrate down to other organizations as it starts playing through. We've seen the success for a large number of really big organizations, and it's interesting to see how this will evolve through the years and really look at how can we incorporate these roles so that they no longer become external, but they become the norm internally. I really hope that helps.
Our learning experiences unlock potential, transform the performance of people and organisations, and help millions around the world build happy and successful careers. We change lives with evidence-based learning that works, sparking real change for real impact.
Our regular series of reports from the Charity Learning Consortium is back, and this time we're talking to Jane Meggerson-Hill of Sport England. See what they're up to.
It's great to be back on Learning Now TV. Thank you to Charity Learning Consortium for sponsoring this section where we talk to many of their members about the great work that they are doing in the third sector and what we can learn in our corporate lives for learning and development. Today, we're going to speak to Jane Meggerson-Hill. Jane is with Sport England, who are obviously known for getting the country moving, but she's going to be talking to us about coaching of a different kind today. During lockdown, she has run a coaching programme for her organisation, and she's got a great story to tell. So, Jane, tell us a little bit about Sport England.
So Sport England are an arm's length body, and we exist to help put the government's strategy into place to help the nation get more active. So it's not just about sport. We are really keen to get everybody from every background to be able to get physically active in whatever way that suits them. So you might have heard of This Girl Can. That's probably our most well-known marketing campaign, but we've also recently launched Join the Movement, which is another way that we're trying to help people keep active in these strange times that we're in.
Okay, well, it's these strange times that we're in that we really want to dig down into today, because you've been not just obviously getting the country moving, but you've been helping your own teams to coach. And that's sort of business coaching, isn't it? That's not standing on the sidelines of a field. So what have you done? Talk us through your story about coaching.
So I had been working on it for well over a year in the planning stage to bring it to life. I think coaching is such a critical skill for all line managers to be able to have in their toolkit. And what we were hoping to achieve was more of a coaching culture at Sport England. So as you said, as an organisation, we're very keen to improve the quality of coaching in the sector that we work with, but internally I was really keen to make sure that our line managers had that skill and were able to use a coaching leadership style, which is a much nicer way of managing people, and also part of our performance management process now is to use, we've moved away from sort of performance appraisals and more towards regular coaching conversations, and having a line manager who's really your coach is important for us as an organisation. So we'd sort of played with some training many years ago when I first started, and we'd done a 2-day in the classroom teaching people how to be coaches. And I think, like a lot of face-to-face training, that was great. People enjoyed it, but that was a nice couple of days. They went away and nothing changed.
Okay, that's quite typical, isn't it? And that, to be honest, coaching is a practical skill. So getting people in a classroom to actually practice it would be quite a normal thing to do. But you've got a different route.
Yeah, well, I've experienced in other organisations, again, a similar approach where we do training, and training is great. But if people go back to an environment and nothing's changed, their behaviours are just going to go back and they're going to do what they've always done. So I was keen from the start to really try and implement a blended learning approach where people had an opportunity to practice, to really practice the skills and to keep revisiting it over a number of months, with the hope that it was more of a kind of learning journey rather than a one-off training event. So a blended programme was something that I set about trying to create. And I did focus groups. I talked to the people who would be involved in the programme, really to understand what they thought they would like to get out of it. So it was a long time in the making, and we were all ready to launch in January. It was intentionally blended in a way that wasn't, so what sometimes also happens is you have a day in the classroom and then we have some follow-up digital content and we call that blended learning, and it's not really.
No, it isn't. That's right.
Because my experience was people didn't, I mean, I did try that, hands up, I did try that, but it didn't work. So again, people just didn't engage with that because it wasn't part of the programme. And our line managers are busy. I mean, this year, particularly for Sport England, has been a very, very busy year. Our line managers have been really busy. As an organisation, we've had a real part to play in helping the nation get through this pandemic. So what I wanted to get across is that coaching isn't something that I wanted to add to my line manager's day. I just wanted to change the nature of the conversation and to help them to have more effective conversations that they were having anyway. Yeah. And in a virtual environment, it's even harder, you know, to have sort of performance conversations in this way. So I was really keen that we kept the program going despite the pandemic that kicked off, that was sort of partway through my first pilot program.
So the impact of the pandemic on the program, it seems like it actually increased the drivers for it. Because like you say, it's harder to manage at a distance remotely. But how did it actually impact on the program rolling out?
Well, we'd started 2 pilot groups in January. So I had 2 pilot groups, and bearing in mind the whole program goes for over 6 months, but we were well into the first 2 pilot groups, and I had another 2 groups due to be starting in March. So the first 2 pilot groups, we'd had our 2 face-to-face days. So our program was designed to be a blended learning program that lasted at least 6 months, and the content is over 8 modules, and those modules are a mix of facilitated face-to-face blended learning. So there's digital learning, there's resources, there's TED Talks, there's video examples and e-learning, as well as facilitated face-to-face sessions. So there was only ever going to be 2 face-to-face sessions, and the rest was going to be accessed digitally. Some of that is facilitated, like action learning set type groups and webinars, but there was only ever going to be 2 face-to-face days, and that was because I really wanted it to be accessible to more people in our organisation. We already had a third of our organisation working remotely, so I really wanted a program that enabled people to access the learning when it suited them, at a time it suited them, where it suited them. So the 2 face-to-face modules we had already run with the first 2 pilot groups, and then, as I said, I had a couple more ready to go in March. So when the pandemic happened, we had to decide, do we run them? So I know a lot of training got cancelled at that time, but I was so keen that we could keep this program going. It was so important, I thought, for the line managers involved and for the kind of culture shift that we were trying to achieve. So I got together with our fantastic supplier. We were working with a great supplier who helped us to deliver the facilitated sessions, and we just rejigged it so that rather than being face-to-face, it was digital. Now, the face-to-face first module was designed to be in a tennis centre, where we got to kind of hit a tennis ball around, and it was really interactive, and first 2 groups absolutely loved that. So there was a little bit of apprehension around, could we actually do that digitally quite as well? But the feedback was amazing, and particularly the second face-to-face day, which uses a forum theatre format, I was just blown away with how effective it actually was, and I felt like the learning content was, 99% there. The thing you miss out on is, coffee and biscuits and cake and the chat at lunch, but the actual learning content, because it is about coaching and you can get into small groups and you can still practice, it actually worked really well virtually, and I was just absolutely thrilled that we didn't have to cancel anything. We were able to keep it going, and the rest of the content was digital anyway, so it felt like a step change, but we didn't have to fundamentally change the whole program.
That's fantastic. So what we're hearing there, you've got really strong drivers, and the drivers around cultural shift, and you've got a really clear program with lots of different elements, so the accessibility for everybody, which is wonderful. The fact that it was virtual, so much of it to start with hasn't really, the impact of lockdown hasn't really been that big a thing for you, and you've actually proven you can teach coaching in an online space, which people traditionally think you need to sit in a room with your coachee and practice. So yeah, a wonderful inspirational story for all of us in the corporate world to really take away. Thanks very much for sharing it, Jane. I appreciate it.
It's my pleasure. Thank you so much.
In the L&D world, we all know our biggest challenge is knowledge fade and demonstrating ROI from our training interventions. At Elephants Don't Forget, we use artificial intelligence to guarantee that what you train your employees, they learn and retain. If you are looking to transform the impact your training content has in your business, improve the ROI, and perhaps help employees learn and retain even the dull regulatory material, drop me a line at nelly@elephantsdon'tforget.com.
Well, Kate, that's the end of the Christmas show, and what bring on 2021. What did you think of today? How did it go for you?
I think the really nice thing about the panel discussion that you led was the opportunity to reflect. I think we're all a bit scared of making predictions for the new year after what's happened this year. But I think if we don't stop and pause and take that moment to think about what we've learned, then you know, we don't want it all to have been for nothing. There's some really valuable lessons that we can take away from, you know, the mess of this year, that, you know, we must look beyond the kind of the drama and see the good, you know, the acceleration of digital, the kind of the move towards a more democratized approach to work, people being able to work from anywhere, anytime, more flexibly. These are good things. And it's really important to stop and pause and reflect on that and think about where L&D has the opportunity to, you know, make a really positive impact, I think, next year.
I agree. I think that the key word is opportunity, but I think L&D has an opportunity, but it also needs to grab that opportunity, take that opportunity. And the danger is that we'll not just build back better, we'll build back worse, and we'll build back in a terrible way. So there is a moment when we can look at what we've gained, what the advantages are, what constraints have been imposed upon us and what advantages have been offered to us, and ensure that we minimize the constraints, maximize the advantages, and make sure, I think, basically, that people are happier, more engaged, and more productive at work. I think that's within our grasp. And I also think that L&D has an absolutely huge role in ensuring that when we begin to get back to something much more approaching normality, we do it well, and we do it with vision, and we do it with compassion and empathy.
And Christina from DECIEM, who we had on the show earlier in the year, she's just, I was talking to her the other day, and she talked about this desire from them to co-create their L&D journey, and that's just really stuck in my head, because I think somebody else from a different corporate organisation said to me they think learners are going to run out of patience in 2021, where they've kind of stuck with L&D, you know, makeshift solutions and things like that during 2020. There's a sense that they're going to run out of patience. But I think if there's this notion that we can co-create and go on this journey to the new normal together, like you say, you know, it's a massive opportunity. So, you know, I hope that just that opportunity to take stock and think about what the good is of this year and how we can build on that for next year. I just think that's really important. And I hope that everybody takes the chance to do that.
I agree. And to stop focusing on individuals and start focusing on the community, because it's the community that's strong, the community that gets us out of trouble, the community that rebuilds and makes a success. So, yeah, I think that's a great challenge for people to embrace. So, okay, Jan the 14th, we'll be back. We will still be virtual, but one day soon we'll be in the same room. How about that? That'll be a delight.
I can't wait. I genuinely can't wait. You know, there's going to be a vacuum at the start of the year around learning technologies, sort of not happening like normal. So I think, you know, if people have thoughts of what they'd like to hear from us during that time, you know, we've just started sending out a newsletter, kind of curating some of our best bits. So look out for that in your inbox and check your junk mail if you haven't seen it, because that's coming out monthly now. But also, if there's anything you'd like to see from us next year, then do drop us a line, because we'd love to be able to continue to bring you all sorts of different content in 2021.
Tell us what you like, tell us what you want more of. We're very happy to oblige if we possibly can. So all the best for Christmas and the New Year for everybody. And Jan 14th. We'll be there, won't we, Kate?
We will. Stay safe, and we'll see you on the other side.
Stay safe.